Hi, this is Sam Manford, and welcome to Tip 3 of C-Level Selling Tips. Today we're going to talk about sales rejection, what you didn't learn in college. Now, sales rejection basically happens because you never really learned how to sell. Now, there's three roles of a salesperson, and unfortunately, you learned the marketing role, and you probably learned it very well by watching other people, watching maybe poor-performing salespeople, or you got trained by your marketing department who promotes the idea of let's go in and tell the customer all about our product. Let's convince them to buy and tell them we're superior to competition, and here's all the reasons why. And that is marketing, and that is necessary to generate interest. And when you hear about numbers game, marketing is a numbers game. But there's two other roles which salespeople don't perform very well, and that is selling and developing relationships, which I'll tell you about in a second. Once in your marketing effort, the customer says or the prospect says, hey, I'm interested, or tell me more, that sounds really interesting, you really need to switch to selling. And at that point, you're no longer telling. Now you've got to learn. What you've got to do is learn how to win the vote of each individual, from the subordinates up to the leaders. And you learn by interviewing, asking questions. So tell me, what's going on in your organization? What kind of issues do you have as it relates to my products and services, or the kinds of solutions that I can provide to you? And you have to hear them out. Once you hear them out, and I talk about this and a lot of other things along this line in further lectures or further tips, then you have to fit what you have to that person's issues. I mean, just because you think someone should have an issue doesn't mean they have an issue. So you have to learn what their issue is and then fit your product to that issue. And then once you've done that, it's now time to develop relationships, especially at high levels. Now, a lot of times in a sales role, you can't get to the high-level people before the sale. But if you can, it's really going to help your cause for two reasons, as we talked about previously. One is it'll give you the information you need to make the sale happen, and two, you're going to find out how soon the sale is going to happen, if the sale is going to happen at all. But even if you don't get there before the sale, after the sale, you want to get in there and develop those relationships so that you can sell more and more stuff into that organization without rejection. Now, here's the common situation. Here's the typical salesperson's approach. This is their thinking. This is the way they go in. I must tell about my offering in order to generate interest. Well, yeah, you do have to tell a little bit, but you really have to ask. You know, I get sales calls from people all the time, and they want to talk to the person in charge and everything like that. Well, you know, and when they get there, they want to tell me all about their products or services. You become a walking commercial. And what do people think about commercials? They think, I want to change the channel, and you get rejection. So that's what the common situation is, and this is the resulting problem. The prospect's going to shut you out unless you hit a pain or a want that they want. A pain or a want that they really would like to have. And I call a lot of this expose and entice. There is a way to present or get people to hit on a pain or a want, even though they're not thinking about it, by exposing and enticing, and I'll talk about that in further tips. But if there is no interest, if the person says, no, I'm really not interested, then you've got to back off. You know, otherwise you're going to kill your chances for the future. But if there is interest, you've got to switch to the selling mode. And selling mode is about learning, interviewing them, then presenting based on what they told you. And once you present, you know, and you get commitment from them, then you've got to start networking to the top people and developing those relationships. Those are the three roles of the salespeople. Now let's check yourself. Let's see how you do. When you start a prospecting or selling discussion with someone, do you ask about his or her issues? Do you always do that? Most of the times you do it. Usually you do it. Sometimes you do it, or you never do it. You always go in and say, hey, let me tell you about everything we've got here. Let me tell you about my products and service and how great they are. Do you probe to learn the challenges this prospect has related to the industry you serve? Like, I'm in the sales industry, so I should be asking people, what are your issues as it relates to your selling team or your sales or your revenue generation? Do you ask those kind of questions? Always? Most of the time? Usually? Or do you not ask questions at all? Are you anxious to tell all about your stuff? You know, most salespeople are. You know, they pick up the phone, hey, let me tell you what we have. Or they go in there and say, hey, Joe, you know, great to see you. I want to tell you all about our newest and latest and our greatest and our all those kinds of things. Do you interrogate with self-serving questions? And what I mean by self-serving questions, these are all about you. You know, what's your budget? How do you handle it now? When will you be deciding? You know, these are you kind of questions because you're asking things that you want to know so that you can see whether there's a fit for you, as opposed to, you know, what are your issues, Joe, as it relates to sales? You know, things like that. So do you always ask these interrogating questions? Most of the times, usually or not. Now this is a little complicated formula we got here. So you got to add 1 plus 2, and then you got to subtract the sum of 3 plus 4. Now if you've got a positive, that's good. If you've got a negative, it means you need some work. And here's where you can get it. My ebooks will walk you through this problem at clevelselling.com. I believe every selling office should have one of these. This particular one's got a 6-page narrative, describes all the hows to handle this situation. It's got the preparation section with 3 great actions of what to do, and then it's got 2 great actions for taking it to the street, which are going to help you internalize these ideas so that you can feel comfortable performing them. Okay? That's all for today. Work through this stuff. Get the ebooks. It'll help you get through these rejection issues, and you can avoid rejection in the future. And I'll see you on tip 4 in future tips. Good selling.